How long does implantation bleeding typically last?
Hello and welcome. In today's video, we're going to discuss a topic that often comes up in early pregnancy: implantation bleeding. This phenomenon often raises questions about its duration, characteristics, and how to differentiate it from a regular menstrual period. Today, we'll focus primarily on how long implantation bleeding typically lasts.
What is implantation bleeding?
Implantation bleeding is a form of very light bleeding that can occur in early pregnancy. This happens when the fertilized egg, or blastocyst, attaches to the lining of the uterus, causing a small amount of bleeding. This event occurs roughly 10 to 14 days after conception, often around the time a woman's regular menstrual period would be due. The timing often leads to confusion between implantation bleeding and the start of a regular period.
How long does implantation bleeding typically last?
Now to our main question. How long does implantation bleeding typically last? Implantation bleeding is usually quite brief. For most women, it lasts typically from a few hours up to 3 days. It's important to remember that this can vary somewhat from person to person. Unlike a regular menstrual period, implantation bleeding is usually much lighter and shorter in duration.
How can I differentiate implantation bleeding from a regular period?
While we're discussing this, it's worth noting how to differentiate implantation bleeding from a regular menstrual period. Implantation bleeding is usually characterized by short duration, as mentioned, typically a few hours to 3 days. Light flow. It's usually much lighter than a normal period. Color. The blood might be pink, red, or even brownish. Cramping. Some women experience mild cramping. On the other hand, a regular period typically lasts between 4 to 7 days, with heavier flow, and could be associated with more intense cramps. That wraps up our discussion on implantation bleeding. Remember, while implantation bleeding is a common early pregnancy symptom, not all women experience it. If you notice any bleeding during pregnancy or if you're unsure about any symptoms, it's always a good idea to consult a healthcare professional. We hope this video has been helpful in understanding how long implantation bleeding typically lasts and how it differs from a regular menstrual period. Thanks for watching.